Hi, and welcome to the Entrepreneur Strategies Podcast. It's a podcast focused on providing valuable insights, inspiration, and strategies to entrepreneurs and individuals passionate about their business growth and success. And in today's episode, it's going to be a little bit different than the typical episode. This time, I'm going to be interviewed by somebody else, and I'll introduce him here in a second. Typically, what I do is I interview small business owners from around the country, and I ask them questions on how they were able to create success in their businesses, overcome some of those obstacles, but at the same time, how they were able to not neglect their family and their personal health. And so, in today's episode, I have my good friend David DeSeal from the Model FA. I've been on his podcast, so it's going to be an absolute pleasure to have him on my podcast. And I'm going to provide some insights on how I was able to create some success within my businesses, some of the challenges that I've faced and continue to face, how I'm overcoming some of those obstacles, and at the same time, how I'm hopefully not neglecting my personal health and my family well-being. So without further ado, I've got David DeSeal here from the Model FA. Really excited, bud, to have you interview me, and I'll let you take it from here.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for having me. And I know in hosting a podcast, it's tough to weave in, talking about yourself, giving your audience some insight as to who you are. It's also kind of awkward if you were to just monologue this on your own. So I appreciate you having me on to pick your brain, hopefully extract some nice nuggets along the way. But I guess let's start at, somewhat the beginning. So you go to high school, you go to college, and did you come out and establish LifePoint right at that stage? Or what were some of the steps in between finishing college and ultimately getting to the point where you are now with LifePoint?
Yeah, I think like a lot of people in their careers, it really happened by accident. I mean, I knew I wanted to be in business and finance, but really what I wanted to was to live in a very beautiful location. And I had a friend that lived in Santa Barbara, California. And for those who know Santa Barbara, California, I mean, it is absolutely beautiful. It looks like Portugal. And so I did whatever I could to get to that location. And so I found a job in finance in Santa Barbara, California, really as just a way to get out there. And I started developing a passion for that. That job actually took me up 2 hours north up the coast to a place called San Luis Obispo. And I started really more the financial planning career with Merrill Lynch. And I worked for them for a couple of years. And that was really a lot of the investment management piece to the business. And I did develop a strong passion for that. From there, I took a more of a promotion type of job with a large West Coast bank chain. And I worked there for 5 years. And that's really where I started getting into the financial planning realm. So investment management, but more so in some of the financial planning strategies, tax strategies that I really started developing a passion for. So tying more into how do we accomplish your goals and how do we make sure that we are getting from A to B the fastest we can in the most efficient way, and making sure that that money is going to last folks for the rest of their lives. And so I was really I really sort of took a deep dive into the knowledge behind that. I got my certified financial planning designation, which there's only about 25% of financial advisors nationally that are certified financial planners. And it's kind of the upper echelon in our industry. And so that's I knew that's the route I wanted to take, but I still felt like it the at least from the firms that I was with, it was still neglecting small business owners, and in particular, small business owners who want to create financial independence through real estate investing. And so that's in 2018. I knew that was the logical next step, was to create my own firm, where I was going to niche in small business owners, and in particular small business owners who want financial independence, and how do we create that for them, and still keeping in mind some of the deep knowledge planning behind the certified financial planning designation. So it was not a linear path. There was a few stops along the way, and a few learned lessons through that of what I really wanted to do with my particular career. And so that's how sort of the path to LifePoint Financial Design happened.
So when you made the switch from what was your last job again before LifePoint?
It was with a large West Coast bank brokerage.
Okay. So when you ultimately made the jump, because I would imagine, and I could be wrong, but there was probably some sort of salary in place in that role. And then obviously with starting your own business, there's no salary at the
Yeah,
beginning.
yeah.
Um, were you married to your wife at the time? Were you guys dating? Had you not met yet? Help me understand like what was going on in your personal life uh right around the time that you took the leap of faith.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of support that my wife provided in that particular situation and starting my own firm. I was She was a girlfriend for Merrill Lynch and then the West Coast bank chain. We did get engaged in the time that I was at the West Coast bank chain, bank brokerage, and then we soon got married towards the end of that. But I was very unhappy towards the end of my time at the bank brokerage. I just felt like one, there was a large space that was being neglected. I felt like it was getting a little bit back into the sort of the product sales that occurs within the finance industry. And so it really got to a point that, here I am trying to continue this on because I was making a good living and I needed to provide for my fiance and then wife during that time period. But it got to a point where I just felt like I couldn't keep doing it. And at that point, I'd rather be broke than to continue doing a job that I felt like wasn't going in the right direction and it wasn't standing up to my moral code and really the passion that I had, which was more in the financial planning space and, particularly with business owners, as opposed to at the time, it was a heavy focus on retirees and late stage retirees. And that wasn't really, I was good at it. I just didn't have a passion for it. I wanted to help folks that were more like myself, more my age, starting their family, really getting into the money earning point of their career and taking leaps of faith as entrepreneurs. And so that's exactly what I had to do myself. I had to make that leap of faith. I had no idea really how many clients were gonna follow me or come along with me. And at that time there was a non-compete, non-solicit, and so I couldn't exactly ask them to come with me. And so there was a giant leap of faith there, especially having a wife that I needed to support. But at the same time, I also knew we didn't have kids yet. At that time, we didn't have a kid, and so I knew that if I was going to do it at all, I had to do it then. And really, I had to bet on myself, and that's exactly what I did. I took the leap of faith. I had, no income at the time, and so very, very, very scary time. And for any entrepreneur out there, they know that exact feeling. It's every day is a complete stress and a worry. But again, as entrepreneurs, you have to bet on yourself and have the confidence that you can make it work.
So I found myself in a similar-ish stage when I was a financial advisor and then got into consulting and started the consulting company. And there was something that you said that really resonates with me about I would rather be broke than continue doing what I was doing. And I was the same exact way. So I guess more specifically, my question is, to you and I, it makes all the sense in the world, right? Like, I'd rather take this leap of faith, even if I'm not making any money right away. But when you have to a certain degree, answer to someone else or at least keep them in the loop, what were those conversations like with your wife in that moment, like right before you put in your resignation and decided to go off on your own? I would imagine it was a mix of support and maybe some doubt trickling in, things like that. Like, I want to understand what those conversations were like.
Yeah, it was tough. Fortunately, I'm very blessed that my wife was very supportive through it all. She knew I was very unhappy, and she had the confidence in me that I could make it work. So the conversations were really around the logistics of how many clients do I need to make this work? How much time is it really going to take me? And so it's just having those upfront conversations of, I'm really sorry, I'm not going to be extremely present for the next 6 months because I have to focus on making this jump work. And she was very understanding. She believed in me, and that actually gave me even more confidence to be able to launch my firm and have it be a success, and to not be broke living on the streets. But it and we we had to scale back our lifestyle extremely, and so I was just very fortunate to have a partner who understands entrepreneurship and what it's going to take for us to be able to get there. And then, shortly after she saw that I was able to do it, then she did it with her own career a couple of years later. And so, it was about making sure this timing was going to work out, and how do we both get ourselves in a position where we have a little bit more freedom and control over our lives.
What was day one like? So you put in your resignation. Did you get to work that very next day? If so, what did that day look like? Like, what were your activities? What were the emotions
Yeah.
going through your head? Because as excited as we can get about making the transition, it's almost like, a dog chasing a trash truck. Like, we get all excited with the anticipation, and then they catch it and they have no idea what to do. Now that they got it, like, what was that first day like?
Yeah, terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. I left the office. I think it was on I want to say it was first thing Monday morning. First thing Monday morning, I made a call to my boss at that time, and he already knew. He had a sense it was coming, and I didn't even have to finish my sentence, and he just, he had asked, "So where are you going?" And I explained that I'm starting my own firm, and couldn't really get into any more details beyond that. I left that office and I went over to my new office space, um, and immediately started getting to work. I had already kind of pre-planned this all out in my head as far as how I was going to make this work. I can't share exactly all of the details because there is a non-compete, non-solicit there, but it was go time, and I very much knew that, and I was sweating and I was panicking. I made some calls, and uh, it was an absolutely horrifying experience because I literally could just have zero income. I could have had zero clients. Fortunately, I had a very strong client base. I was very appreciative of the work that I had done for them. They were able to find me, and I was able to make it work. Now, it didn't happen all at once, and so in my head, I'm already saying, okay, that's now I'm making 5,000 a year, and then another client acquisition. Okay, now I'm making 10,000 a year. Whatever it was, and I'm just in my head. I'm like, what could I like realistically live off of at bare bones? And once I got to that point of at least a bare bones minimum survival, uh, then I felt a little bit better. But that process just to even get there was at least 2-3 months in client acquisitions to get to a bare bones of like, oh my God, I can actually like pay my bills. I can't really, I can maybe only eat one meal, one meal a day, but I can at least pay my bills. And so, yeah, it was horrifying. And it was go time as soon as that transition happened. I mean, it was go time, and I was working, long, long days because all the paperwork and everything that I had to do for any sort of client acquisition was all on me. And that's a very tedious process.
Well, it's still impressive that you're able to make enough revenue in your first 2 or 3 months to start eating again. I'm sure you were pretty hungry over that time period. I joke, but I I would imagine that you're similar to me in that when I got started, even though I was in business for myself, I wasn't necessarily in business by myself. So there were, some folks that were close to me. I was close with them, that I sought, mentorship and guidance from, ranging from parents to past colleagues to, friends, folks like that. And then there were mentors that I leaned on that have no idea they were mentors of mine. But they're authors, they're podcast hosts, they're folks that
Yep.
focus on personal development. And I learned arguably even more from them than the people that, I was super close with. So I'm curious to know, during this transition, who did you lean on for help and guidance and insight along the journey? Because I'm sure there were some days where you were fired up, you were, super stoked, and things were going well in the right trajectory, and there were other days where maybe not so much, or you just woke up perhaps with lower energy. At least I know that happens to me, the entrepreneurial roller coaster, so to speak. So who'd you lean on for your help, your guidance, and insight as you were building this?
Well, I'm a huge proponent of self development books. I'm a strong reader. I read a lot of books a year on self development, and I feel like certain books come to you at the right timing, like when you need it in your life.
Mm.
Um, I was with the bank brokerage, and I had taken a walk just to get out of the office because I was not very happy. And I walked to the Barnes and Nobles, and I looked on the bookshelf, and I saw the 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. And I'm a little bit embarrassed to say that because the title, and even Tim Ferriss is embarrassed. He says, of the book title, The 4-Hour Workweek. It's just what tested best. And because it sort of implies you only want to work 4 hours a week, and that's not the case. It's just about doing things smarter and creating a life of fulfillment. And how do we accomplish this? And so that was really the spark to it. That led me to another book that I ended up, after starting to listen to Tim Ferriss's podcast. He talks about a guy named Ryan Holiday a lot, who he has a lot of books on Stoic philosophy. And so I read the book The Obstacle is the Way. And so for me, that sort of tied in the entrepreneurship, life fulfillment, how to be more efficient with the Stoic philosophy of really taking the emotion out of the process. And then I read another book called the Happiness Equation. And all of those three books combined, without me even knowing it at the time, inspired me really down this journey of like, do what you want to do what you know is right, take the emotion out of the process of jumping and doing that, taking the leap of faith, but create a business that's something that gives you passion and gives you the ability and the freedom and the flexibility to also enjoy life, not to neglect your health and not to neglect your family well-being. And so it really started, I think, from self-development books. I had made that decision up in my mind that I was going to take this leap of faith in entrepreneurship and starting my own financial planning firm. And then before making that jump, then I leaned on a couple of mentors that I had in the industry that had taken that leap of faith themselves. And so I was in close contact with them, picking their brain, like how specifically do you do this, the legalities behind it, how can I immediately get clients, but without breaking the non-compete, non-solicit. And so there's been, in my journey, I lean on a lot of people, and I lean on you yourself, David. I believe in community within industries, and really leaning on those partnerships and being open, open to vulnerabilities, if I can say that word. Oh, wow. And being open about that, and just admitting that you need help, and someday they're going to need help from me. And so, yeah, there was a lot of people along the journey, but I think I credit books to kind of starting me on the journey, and then leaning on those folks to get me through the journey.
Well, it's interesting that you position it like that, because I'm of the belief that, be it books, podcasts, audio books, YouTube videos, there's a certain level of foundational planning that you need to focus on first to be in a certain place mindset wise, to be able to receive information, feedback, and guidance from an actual mentor. And I know when people come to me and look for mentorship, I'll typically, as like a qualifier, I'll typically share a podcast episode or two, maybe a book or two, and say, hey, if you haven't, read or listened to this yet, I think it would be a great start. Go ahead, do that, come back to me, let me know your thoughts, and I'm more than happy to help. And what's interesting about that is the people who actually do that, not only do they benefit from it, but it shows me that they're taking it seriously. And the ones that weren't serious about it anyways. And it kind of protects the mentor in that equation. It protects their time. So I'm glad that you took that approach where, through self-improvement, you have to hold yourself accountable first. And then once you get to a point to where you're like, all right, it'd be really helpful to have someone who's already done what I'm looking to do help at this point. I kind of gotten as far as I can on my own. I think that I would imagine anyways that when you reach out to those folks, they were more than happy to help you at that point in time because they saw that you were already working hard on your own and not just looking for a shortcut and having your hand held by them from day one. Is that a fair
Yeah, I think
assessment?
it is. Yeah, I think when you're looking for help in mentors and mentees in whatever industry that you're in, I that really is going to come. That two-way relationship is really going to come when they see the credibility that you are actually working hard. Like you want to create success, and then in turn, then provide success tips to others. And I think then that bond can really form. I mean, it's not going to form if you're just halfway in, right? That people can sense that right away. And so the relationships that I've created since I've been in this industry, over the 14 years that I've been in this industry, the relationships that I've created have been around for a long time, and I think that's because we all have this passion and dedication to not just doing our jobs really well, but really lifting the entire industry up. I think that passion then is like people can see that and sense that, and they want to feed off of that and they want to be around that. And so that's how this community kind of forms, and how people are trusting enough to provide help along the way because they know that you're going to be in this for the long run and in it for the right reasons.
Understood. So I'm a big believer, as I know you are as well, having listened to your show and seeing kind of the information that you're gathering from the guests that you have on. But a big believer in all the different aspects of your life are connected, as you put it, your wealth and your health and your family. And I know for me personally, whenever I'm operating optimally from a business standpoint, I'm usually operating optimally from a fitness standpoint. And anytime I take my foot off the gas from a fitness standpoint, my business suffers as a result.
Yeah.
What role has and you're a pretty fit guy, so I would imagine that it has an important place in your life and your routine. But what does that look like for you, and how do you integrate that and stay consistent with it while you're running and growing a business?
Yeah. And that's really the whole reason behind the one of the factors behind the show really is your personal health and your family well-being, because I think all three of those elements, including the business, is tied together. And if any particular area is suffering, then the others are going to suffer. If all are performing well, then the entire unit strengthens, including the business. Early in my career, particularly with the first two firms that I was at, there was an expectation that you were going to be there all day long, work all the time, answer every single email within seconds, phone calls, et cetera. And so I can't say that I've always been great, in marrying the three together. I did focus a lot on my career because the expectations were really there, and you kind of feed into it. It almost becomes a bit addictive, and that's exactly how corporate cultures really want that to work. They want you to get addicted to the emails, the corporate culture. But I know for me, for instance, at different points, my health was neglected. And I know that I wasn't the best husband to my wife, mostly because not because I was like a jerk, but mostly because my mind wasn't there, right? My mind was still focused on the day, the daily activities of business, and there would be moments where I realized I hadn't really said a word to my wife all night long, and it was really because I was just so focused on whatever issue was happening at work. And that's not fair. It's not fair to her, but it also is really what's holding me back in creating the problems at work, because I don't have that balance in my personal health and my life as being a husband and a partner to my wife. Um, but now, as I've started my own business, I realize how important it is to have good health, to have, to be a good husband and now be a good father, because those all tie in. If I'm not happy, if I'm neglecting one of those areas, my business is going to suffer. And, same thing if I were to be, I work out, I do work out a lot. It's a non-negotiable. Every day I have to work out, and that's my release. That's like the way to de-stress from whatever's happening at work, whatever's happening in other areas of my life. My personal health is sort of my de-stress moment, and that's what makes me better at my job. Once I'm able to get that workout in, um, then I'm I guess I free up that mind share for the other areas of my life. But if I were to focus too much on my personal health, I'm a big trail runner. If I were to just be off trail running all day long, well, then I'm neglecting my job, and I'm neglecting my wife and my son. And so it's just making sure that every area is gets a part of your day.
So help me understand that. And I'm glad that you ended with that, because I was going to ask for more of a tactful response on your end, specifically in the structure of your day. Because when I work with folks who own businesses, oftentimes I hear, I don't have time.
Yeah.
And I can only, commit to being home at 5 o'clock 2 days a week, but the other nights I have to, work till 7 or 8. And it puts a big strain. I mean, they can be overweight, or at least unhappy with the way that they look and they feel. And then there tends to be some animosity that builds at home when they're overly focused on their business. So more specifically, what does a typical day or week, however you want to answer it, look like to where you're able to fit in your health priorities, your business priorities, and then ultimately, arguably, the most important, which is your family priorities? How do you weave those into a day?
Yeah, I've tweaked it over the years, and I can't say it's always exactly the same. Although I'm a man of routine, so I try and keep it exactly the same. But I also have a toddler, so the
You got to
way
be somewhat nimble.
yeah, you got to be somewhat nimble. There might be a day where you got to pick him up from daycare, and then that throws a wrench in all of your plans. You got to pick him up early, or he's waking up earlier, or whatever it is. But so it's had to be a little bit flexible over the last year and almost 2 years at this point. But I try to I wake up early. I'm a morning person, so I typically wake up between, I don't know, 5:30 and 6. And the first thing I do is I try to move my body, because now I'm 40 years old. My body's getting a little bit tighter, and so I wake up, I stretch. So I just do like a little 15-minute stretch routine, and then I'll try and learn or do something, whether it's read, or right now I'm learning Spanish. So I'm taking my Babbel lessons, and I'll do that for 10 to 15 minutes, however long it is, until my son wakes up. And then during that time, I try to be present for my son. I know there's only going to be so many moments where he's going to want to cuddle with me, hug me in the morning, before at some point, you snap your fingers and then they just don't even want to talk to you. So I'm very cognizant of that. And I'm also cognizant that my wife needs to get ready for her day. So I try to be present with my son first thing in the morning. Then once we drop him off at daycare, then I go into my work routine. And, I have my meetings and, I'm doing client work or I'm doing things like this podcast. But at 2 o'clock every day, that is the time that I'm going to work out. So at 2 o'clock to 3:30 is my workout time. So I go to the gym during the middle of the day. And I do that because one, I'm an entrepreneur, right? And I have the ability to create the flexibility in my day. So non-negotiable 2 to 3:30. It's a really good break in the day. Gives me time to focus on my personal health. And then it allows me to still be a present father and husband when I get home from work. But 2 to 3:30, and then I'm able to actually check emails, and wrap up that day. Because look, it's an hour and a half in your day, but an hour and a half is not going to, you're not going to lose the business within that hour and a half. There's never going to be a client situation that's so important that you can't get back to them within an hour to an hour and a half. So I've just tried to make that a priority. 2 to 3:30, finish up the day, and then be present with my wife and my son for the rest of the day. And hopefully, if things go according to plan, my wife and I can have a little happy hour, maybe from 5 to 6 before we go pick up our son, so we can actually have one-on-one time before then trying to be present as a father.
I like the way you start your day, and it seems like you may even wake up a little bit before your wife. And if that's the case, it gives you an opportunity. It's like when you go on an airplane and they're going through all the, security, not security, but the overview before you take off, where they're like, secure your mask before helping others. And when you think about it, once your day actually gets started, outside of your workout time at, from 2 to 3:30, you're giving your life up for everyone else, your clients that you're serving, the prospects that you're trying to serve, your wife, your son. So even that 15 to 30 or so minute block of time before the family wakes up, you're doing a good job securing your mask before helping others. And that helps so much. Otherwise, you get to the end of the day, you're like, wow, I didn't do anything for myself. And if you're not the best version of yourself, ultimately you won't be the best version for the folks that you're trying to serve around you. So I really like that approach in terms of just waking up an extra 30 minutes before everyone else and getting a few things done. And I'm
Yeah.
sure that that's been immensely helpful.
It's been incredibly helpful. Just even start the day, just with a little bit of peace in the morning, stretching. And because I don't know, about at 40 years old, I wake up and I'm pretty sore, especially from carrying a kid on one hip, for a good portion of the morning or in the afternoon. And so just being able to stretch, have a clear mind, then move into the day. Right. And it's the same thing for the workout period from 2 to 3:30. The first 30 minutes of that workout, I might just be spinning my wheels thinking about work. But by the end of that workout, all of it is just kind of flushed out of my system. And so it helps me transition into wrapping up the day successfully, but then really, transitioning into being a husband and a father and being present for them, because I was able to, sweat out all of that tension. It's hard for me to make the transition from work to personal. And so that time period really helps.
So as we wrap up here, if there's an entrepreneur, business owner who's listening, who says, wow, I haven't been able to work out in months or years, or I feel like anytime I'm with my family, I'm thinking about work. And anytime I'm working, I'm thinking about my family. And I just have this guilt being passed back and forth, throughout the day that says, I would love to have a routine like that. But anytime I start it, it doesn't work. What would be your advice to them to get started in a routine that serves them personally, their
Yep.
business, their health, and their family well-being as well? What would be your advice to those folks?
Well, the great news is technology has come a long way. And so you can set reminders. There's plenty of apps that'll tell you to, get up and move, or, you can time block, on your phone. And so you have this period to this period is X amount of time. And it really just takes starting, right? You just got to do it. You have to be in the mindset that it's non-negotiable. So, my workout time is non-negotiable. That's just, it happens every single day. There may be a new client that's, or a prospective client that I really, really want to start working with, and they can only meet at 2 o'clock. I just have to be of the mindset that I can't negotiate on my health, because I'm not going to be a good business owner. I'm not going to be a good financial planner for that client if I don't get my personal health in order. And so I think the combination of technology and then just, again, the determination, the time blocking, and there's plenty of systems to manage that. If you have an assistant, you just got to have a conversation with your assistant and say, hey, look, I need help from you. I need to be a better boss and a better business owner. So can you help me get my butt out of the office at X time or whatever it is, to go on a walk, to do a quick Peloton workout, anything to move around a little bit. And then again, like many successful routines, you have to prepare for it. So have your gym bag right next to your desk. Make it so it's harder to not do it than it is to do it.
And I would
That
say
would be my
too,
advice.
yeah, and I would say too, there are two things that stick out with what you said. One is it's okay to say no. There's a lot of freedom that you feel when you do say no. And the reality is, if you ever have someone where they can only meet at 2 o'clock, that's not true. They can meet at a different time. And you just need to stick to your guns and say, hey, that actually doesn't work, but what about this time or this time? And they're like, yeah, actually I can make that work. And they fold to your schedule more often than they don't. I feel like that can just be a built-in excuse for folks who say they want to focus on their health, but maybe it seems a little bit too difficult, and it's just easier to say yes to that prospective client.
Yeah,
The other thing that
exactly.
sticks out as well is making sure that when you're going from a routine to when you're going from no routine, excuse me, into a routine, you said something like you just got to do it. And the reality is when you do force yourself to do it, like rarely if ever does anyone go to the gym and regret doing it afterwards.
Yes.
So it's
Yeah,
just walking the door, and you're going to be so happy, that you did.
exactly. Yeah, I agree. I once saw, and this is a long time ago, it was one of those memes that said, I really regret that workout, said no one ever. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just a matter of doing it. And you won't regret it. And just, again, making things a priority. Work is never going to be that important, because if you're always focused on work and taking that prospective client and making your day negotiable, making it dictated by somebody else, then the rest of your life is going to run away from you, and then eventually your business will collapse too. I think business is important, but it's never more important than your family or your health.
Spot on. Well, Mike, I really appreciate you tagging me in to help host/co-host this particular episode. And I know you and I have known each other from afar for a while, just through social media. We've had an opportunity to meet in person and work together more formally. But even in this episode, I learned a bunch, not just about you, but from you. So I appreciate that insight.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on the show. This is my show. Thanks for coming on to the show, David. And it was really fun to do this little spin around, because honestly, I actually forgot whose show it was for a second.
That's
But
funny.
you did a great job, and hopefully, I think a lot of the listeners will get a little bit of insight, more about me, and hopefully encourage them to really tie in those three cornerstones together: the business, the health, and the family, because all of them are very important. And so I hope people learn from my experiences, and were able to implement that into their lives.
Awesome. Well, I did, so I would expect that they did as well. And looking forward to listening to your next episode, Mike.
All right. Good seeing you, David.
You too.